Well, we're going to use gCADPlus to aid us in placing irrigation sprinklers. These are sprinklers at a distance of 13.5 metres, so they have a big, wide throw, and we want to place them accurately so that we get good grass coverage and watering. We'll concentrate just on this smaller area of the playing fields for the moment, and you'll notice that I've put a grid over the surface. So if we pick that grid, we can see a series of individual lines on a layer called L grid. So if I was to do that again, I would make the layer L grid current, and then via the Tools and Insert Grid Lines command, I'd set up a grid. Well, let's reduce the number of lines because we've got rather too many. So we'll say 5 horizontal and 5 vertical. Changing my mind again, we'll make it 8 and 8. The X spacing 13,500, that's the throw, the radius of the throw of the water, and the extension and text size I've made it 400, so I can OK there. And you can see in comes the grid, and the grid gets drawn according to your settings. You can stamp several grids in, and you can see it's ready to stamp the next grid in. So you want to hit the escape, make sure you hit the escape key, you may put too many grids down. The grid comes in as individual lines, and the reason for that, of course, is that you want to be able to place sprinklers. Let's just demonstrate that. We would have a block called a full circle, and we can insert it into the drawing, specified scale of, well, they come into a scale of 1, so I'll OK that. And if we set our insert option on, you can see we can easily place, in this case, a full circle sprinkler at the intersection of the grid. So the grid is used to help us. We want to get really good coverage, and these sprinklers should spray out as far as the next irrigation head. Well, in contrast to the full circles, which obviously occupy the central zone, we made a block called half circle sprinkler, half circle, and we pop these along the sides and boundary of this particular piece of the playing field. So the next stage is to prepare a layout so we can show the design, and of course for that is format and layout. And I know that this client wants the layout not on an A1 sheet but on an A3 sheet, so let's do that. We'll select an A3, which is up the top, and we'll make it landscape view, and we'll OK that. So here's layout 2, zoom extents, and we're looking at a floating viewport at a scale of about 440 at the moment, and we'll adjust that in a little while. Grid is on automatically, and I've turned that off. Now I'm in the habit of including an internal scale, so I'll go back to model space and I'll go to library, details, and scroll down to scale bars, and I'll pick about a 20 metre scale bar and insert that into the drawing into a convenient place. And maybe we put it on the road surface there. Doesn't show up perhaps as well as we want, but let's just check what it looks like in layout view. It's probably adequate, but just to show you, it's easy to pick that because it's a block. You can edit that block and select all the entities in the block and change their colour to by layer, and then close the block editor. And if we go to our layout space, it's gone black, hasn't it? So we really need to change that block. We really want these not to be by layer, but we want to make them, by selecting the colour, we'll make them white, so it'll definitely then stand out on that layout sheet. So we've now got an internal scale, and it doesn't really matter what sized paper we print to, we've got that internal scale. So here's our layout 2. I'm happiest when I can give that a meaningful name. So that's irrigation plan A3. Whoops, not Palin, but plan, we'll leave it for the moment. You can fix that up. I can fix it up. What happened then, the layouts manager, what I didn't do is hit the enter key. So that's irrigation and I'll use a dash A3, whoops, and hit enter. When you hit enter, that burns it in. So the tab is now labelled. So I can zoom extents. We're looking at an A3 sheet of paper. If I use the distance command and went from here across to here, I get nearly 420, which is correct. And what we now want to do is bring in our title block. But what I do at this stage is to maximise my view of the site. So I click on select the floating viewport, double click, and I bring in my magenta box so that I get the maximum view that I can. I'll just bring that down a little, right click and display on the layout. What I'm trying to do is to get the maximum view of the floating viewport, but give me space down the bottom for my title block. So our floating viewport is sitting there. Now we want to bring in our drawing sheet. That's best done by the blocks command, and you would click add from another file and browse to the location of your drawing sheet. Mine is already in the drawing, and what I'm now going to do is to insert it into the drawing. So when I say OK, can you see that the drawing sheet goes behind me, and I carefully place the drawing sheet down to give me maximum display of the site. Well, if we return to model space, you can make the sprinkler blocks quite complex if you wish. If I click here and I say let's turn on the irrigation zone, and we'll tick it. Can you see now that there are some black lines running through here? We'll change the view this time away from white to black, and that shows up those lines. Whether they show or not is going to be dependent on the setting of your background view, and in this case we're doing colour by layer. But can you see that was the half circle one, and let's pick full circle, and that runs through here. So you should be able to see that we've got good coverage, good sprinkler coverage running all the way through the design, confirming that we will be irrigating nice and evenly with that design. So let's go back to our irrigation, and we may or may not want to show it on there, but again, if you do want to show it, it's the same as we did before. We need to edit the block. So let's do this one, edit that block, and there's the half circle. The distance from this point here to that point there is twice the sprinkler, the radius of the sprinkler head with 13.5, so we're doubling it for the entire spray there. What we want to do is to pick these and set their colour, not by layer, but colour white, and we'll close the block editor. Now when we go to the irrigation sheet here, you can see that the half circles now show, and I can do exactly the same with the full circle block, edit it, pick the outer bit and change its colour to 255 and close the block editor. So here we are now in the irrigation layout, zoom extents, and we're ready to print the design. Now I would suggest that for your client you wouldn't be showing those circles, so we can go back in here and we'll turn off the irrigation zone. So now you may now move to the next stage of putting in your source of water, starting to run the lengths of pipe that connect each and every sprinkler head, and the solenoid valves and your wiring system that control the whole design.